And so let these words of the Scripture be a reminder to us that the presence and power and the goodness of God that heals and supplies our needs is not limited by the traditions of the church to certain days. For God is that present power with us through every breath, through every heartbeat, through every day and year of our lives. Well, today I'd like to share with you a lesson, and just to put it in context, this was the lesson that I shared with Unity Friends at the Chautauqua Institution, where I had my recent retreat and working vacation, I'll call it that, and also had the opportunity to share it with Unity Christ Church in St. Louis, one of the older established Unity churches in the city of St. Louis. And it may sound like a strange title, The Human Being from Root to Blossom. But I invite you and encourage you to try to stay with me through this lesson. And we're going to begin it first with a verse intended to set the stage for the idea we're going to work with this morning. For it speaks to the wholeness, the completeness of the human being as created by God. The sphere of the Spirit is the soul's true home, and the human being will surely reach it by walking the path of honest thought, by choosing as one's guide the fount of love implanted in the heart, by opening the eye of one's soul to nature's script, spread out before one through all the universe, telling the story of spirit in all that lives and thrives, and even in the silent spaciousness of lifeless things, and in the stream of time, the process of becoming. This verse might seem a little mysterious to you if you've never heard it before. However, I chose it because we are going to be working with a metaphor or image of the human being, and also for the indication to us to behold and see the Spirit active always and within this process of becoming. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, encouraged Unity students to always look for the activity of Spirit behind all things. He often would say, get behind the idea. See the divine idea that is trying to express through the outer form or circumstance. In 1890, after a small group meditation that Charles and Myrtle Fillmore held in their small home on Wabash Avenue in Kansas City, Charles declared from his inner vision or experience 3 things. First of all, that unity would be the name of the work. Unity would be the name of the work. He had worked with previous names from the beginning of Unity in 1889, their first publication being called Modern Thought, then Christian Thought, then for a while the magazine was known as Thought. But finally in 1890, it came to him, this word unity. But you see, nowadays, 125 years later, for many of us, that is a name of an organization, a name of our individual church. But when Charles first offered it, and it first came forth, it was more a quality. To see the unity of spirit, active. God's gesture and power working through each one of us, working through every aspect of the created world. To see with eyes that beheld this unity. A minister that I have admired for many years happened to be the director, until a couple of years ago, the director of the Department of Religion at the Chautauqua Institution, where I just had the pleasure of being. It is in the very western corner of the state of New York. Dr. Joan Brown Campbell, wonderful minister and author, she was interviewed about Chautauqua by CBS News for that wonderful Sunday morning show that CBS does. And in that interview, she said something that really has stuck with me now for a number of years. They were asking her about what the Chautauqua Institution was about, what the people experienced there. About 100,000 people come every summer for the 9-week program, or some part of it, some spending just a week, as I did. But there are thousands of people there. And they were asking Dr. Campbell, and she said, in her experience in ministry and at Chautauqua, what she thought the world needed most was not more believers, but more beholders. People that, regardless of their faith tradition or however they practiced their own spirituality, beholders that could see, as Charles Fillmore indicated, the unity or the activity of spirit in their own life, in the lives of others, and in all the world. So we're going to work with that idea today. You see, our whole human family worldwide is so diverse that we will never hold the same beliefs, opinions, and ideas. However, we can all agree to behold, to look, to see Spirit active among all people, in all places, in all circumstances. Even those who describe themselves as non-believers, as atheists, those who focus, let's say, upon materialistic science, or who have no understanding nor interest in the invisible world, in the spiritual world. Even they can behold the activity of life and its continual process of becoming. All can hold to this aspect of being a witness, a beholder of good, of God, of life in all things. Now, I entitled my lesson today, The Human Being from Root to Blossom. And perhaps as you dressed for church today, you may not have looked in the mirror and said, oh, what a beautiful flower I am. What a beautiful plant I am. That may not have been your image, but I'm going to encourage you to consider it. And in the summer heat of this summer, not only here in Missouri, but all around our country, and even when I was way up in New York State, even there it was warm and humid. And so in this rather warm summer, many of us would not choose to be a flower or a plant living out in our garden these days. But you see, in unity and in 19th century theosophy, a great movement started in this country that then spread worldwide, that looked at spiritual science or endeavored to understand the spiritual principles or the essential ideas that stood behind all creation. That informed and established the basics in our unity teachings. Just as in unity and theosophy and other movements of the late 19th century, the human being was conceived to be of three aspects: body, soul, or mind if you prefer, and spirit. Body, soul, mind, spirit. In Lessons in Truth, a fundamental text for our unity movement, now for more than a century, and also through the work of Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, we had this description of body, soul, and spirit. In unity, we understand the Christ as the perfect idea of being in the mind of God for the individual. It is the infinite individually expressed. The Fillmores described the greatest, fullest, most complete example was the Christ in Jesus of Nazareth. The model, the great demonstrator, as they called it, for all of humanity. This ancient understanding of the human being, which goes way back, of body, mind, spirit, was altered about the 9th century, about 1,000 years ago, when it was considered that perhaps the human being was really body and soul, and the eternal aspect of spirit, that which Emily Cady described in Lessons in Truth as that perfect pattern of our being, that was set aside. But that interest in body, soul, and spirit was picked up again. Oh, it was hidden through the centuries, but it became a focal point again in the 19th century through many movements such as Theosophy and Unity and others. So we're going to set aside those complex ideas and take up this idea or this image of the human being as plant. Now, as I said to somebody this morning when they asked about the title, I said, well, my intention is not to say that each one of us is as dumb as a plant. That was not. But to let the plant speak to us. Now, you see, the context I had as guest minister for Unity at the Chautauqua Institution, they are surrounded by 700 acres of beautiful grounds on Chautauqua Lake. Nature all about them. They've spent 142 years now developing the property through beautiful gardens of all kinds. And as Karen can attest to, it's a joy and a wonder to walk through that property and see all the beauty, both natural and that which has been cultivated. But we have it here. Just outside, our garden is growing with great abundance. I don't know what the mums have decided to do, but they're just absolutely enormous this year. So if you haven't been outside, you might want to go out after service and enjoy that a little bit. But we do have the privilege here at Lake of the Ozarks that we have a lot of natural beauty around us. And sometimes, being modern people who are used to consuming things, sometimes we look at nature and wonder, what is my delight? What would I like to see? How do I want to be pleased by nature? But we have to work a little harder, and it's my intention today to look at nature and see what it is showing you about life. What it is holding up to you like a mirror to help you better understand yourself. Well, if we take the example of the plant, it's showing us, just like a mirror does, it's showing us our own image. And what do I mean by that? Well, if the human being is body, soul, and spirit, 3 parts, the plant is showing us the same thing through its nature, through its organization. What does it show us first? Its rooty nature. Those roots that go deep into Mother Earth, holding the plant, allowing it to grow and rise. But it also brings in nourishment. It's the plant's connection to the greater earth. And we too have that. For you see, in our old teaching, our body is not just this glorious thing here I show before you. It is also the body of my affairs, my relationships, my connection with the greater human family and the world. All of that is my body or my root. So all of the connections that you have to family, and not just your bloodline connections, but your rootedness into your neighbors, your community, your country, your world. All this is your root system going into life. And just like the plant, it brings you nourishment. We have the sustaining power of our friends and family and others who support us, who feed us through good encouragement. And so that is our root nature, like the plant. Then the plant is showing us its foliage. You can just look outside our windows here and see the trees and bushes. They're covered with all of these leaves. And if you remember from our class lessons in school, we know that each one of those leaves is this amazing divine machine that draws from the outer world light and warmth. And through its divine design, it transforms all of that into the necessities and the nutrients that it needs to feed its growth. So we too, we have a soul that is like the foliage of the plant. It takes in from the outer world all that it needs to be inwardly transformed, to find its connection and its meaning and its purpose in life. Charles Fillmore said our soul was pivotal, like a hinge of a door. It looked out into the world and it took in all this stimulation, all this experience, and then it turned within and made its inner meaning the food of the soul from what it had taken in. Our soul nature, like the plant's leafy nature. And finally, the plant shows us its greatest accomplishment, not only in beauty through the blossom, but also what is accomplished in the blossom. For the blossom is its wonderful glory, its crowning achievement as a plant, yet within it is the seed, the hope, the possibility of its future. That seed will go from that individual plant and create anew, continuing this process of unfolding. So we too have this divine spirit within us. It goes by many names. In unity, we often refer to the Christ within. It is that divine potential that is not only the greatest accomplishment of our individuality, our story, our unique journey of life fulfilled, our gift to the world, but it also contains in it a seed of hope. That which will go beyond the individual experience to a new day. That which will go on beyond this life to another experience. The seed of our future is found in that flower, that blossom. So the plant, in its special way out there in nature, all of nature, is constantly holding a mirror up to you, saying, look, see life unfolding, and realize that life is unfolding in you in a unique way. You are blossoming. You are becoming your individual gift to the world. Now we might wonder, how does this connect back to what Charles Fillmore called this process of beholding the unity of spirit? Well, if God is omnipresent, if life is everywhere present as we affirm in our opening statement in the service, then we want to develop our capacity to behold it, not at work just in our individual life, but in the lives of others, and to praise that unfolding rather than criticizing any particular circumstance. To praise what is at work in each individual. We often express that through the statement we've used many times, Namaste. The divine within me recognizes or greets the divine within you. That is our connection. That is our relationship that makes for family, community, nation, world. People working together, supporting one another, rather than those working against one another. And how important it is to be able in our world at this time to bring this power of beholding, seeing good unfolding in others and in the world. It's so necessary. I was reminded yesterday I had the opportunity, because of friends that I grew up with in Independence, Missouri, they put together a wonderful party. It was a tour of things we had grown up with in Independence. And it began at the Truman Library. And it was very special because my friend not only organized a tour at Truman Library, but she even managed to get President Truman's grandson, Clifton Daniel, to be present there to share with us reminiscences or memories of his grandfather. Well, I had some of my own because I grew up in the First Baptist Church in Independence, Missouri, that was just a block away from the Truman home there. And I remember as a child that often President Truman, on his daily walks, would stop into the Sunday service at the Baptist Church, and he'd sit way in the back so he wouldn't cause any disturbance. Well, often my father sat way in the back in case he received a call to go to the hospital to deliver a baby. And so here in the back of the room would sit this staunch retired president, Democratic, and my father, a staunch Republican. through the family all the way back to President Lincoln. But what was amazing was they had a wonderful respect for one another. Even though their choices were different, they honored and respected one another. And how our world could use that impulse now, that beholding impulse that sees the good, praises it, and wants to draw it forth. So at this time, let us turn to a time of meditation and take this idea, this image, in. And rather than working with the plant image, we're going to use another verse from Theosophy. We have worked with this before. But it takes us into a conception of the outer world and what it is teaching about our inner reality. It begins with this process of an inner questioning, an ancient meditative process of posing a question so that the spirit of truth within you might lead you into an understanding or an answer to the question. So just relax, allow your attention to turn within, and just hold these questions as I present them to you in the confidence that the Spirit of truth, always present with you, will lead you into your understanding of what God's creation is trying to tell you. What is more radiant than the sun in its noontime glory? What is purer than the snow on the mountain peak? What is finer than the essence of all created things? It is the self, the individuality, the spirit within my heart. I am that self. That self am I. So we rest with this image of the radiant physical sun and realize that the truth, the self within us, is even more radiant. The self is not limited to cycles of day and night. The self shines at all times. It's our inner light that guides us through life as we are willing to walk and work in its illumination. This higher self, this divine reality within us, is purer than the snow on the mountain peak. For it is not a mixture of things. It is God's pure gift, the very power of life within us. This divine self within is finer than the essence of all created things. For it is not made up of our individual experiences, our backgrounds, our education, our careers. For it is something absolutely essential. That the Creator loved us so that we were brought into being as God's gift to creation. So for a moment in the silence, we hold this image of our spirit, our divine self, the I am of our existence. This is the center of power within us. This is the Christ within us. As we rest in the silence, and gently now we begin to bring our attention back from this center place of being and return our attention to our outer senses. We become aware of this sanctuary in which we're seated with friends. And as we're ready, we open our eyes. And as our ushers are preparing, I will offer you your homework assignment, your call to action. If you choose to do it, this week take some time to practice this action of beholding, looking at the world all around you, from a simple house plant to the greater landscape of the lake. And take a few moments and see, what is the life of God spread out through all creation? What is the story that it's trying to reveal about itself and about you? Be a beholder, willing to see this process of becoming. We're all part of it. We're in the midst of the world that is constantly unfolding. So let that be our lesson for the week.